Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen, here with life coach Cindy Chavez. Today is Wednesday, May the 20th, 2020, 4 p.m. New York time. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy that here in Connecticut, we are finally opening up the state a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit, cracking it open just a tiny bit.
Just a little bit.
See if life still exists. It turns out life actually does still exist. We found that out today because Louise went out and I went out to do some shopping and cars were everywhere.
Oh my God.
Shoppers were stores were open. They all were wearing masks and all that kind of thing, social distancing. But it was like, oh my God, I'd almost forgotten what this was like.
Did you have of course our city was closed down too. But there's still, I guess I live on a busy street. There still seemed to be so much traffic all the time.
It was like dead.
Really? Okay.
You'd go to the store and you might see 3 cars.
Oh, wow.
It was really, really quiet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't have that here. I mean, we did have, of course, people weren't going out to restaurants or things like that, but the grocery store would be pretty busy, and they had all the protocol in place for it. But It was just funny that I kept wondering, I look out my window and I'm like, still seems like there's quite a bit of traffic. Now today it does seem like there's more. We started opening things up Friday. So today I really noticed, and I think it's because even though there was traffic, there wasn't a lot of, bigger trucks
Mm-hmm.
And so they make a lot of noise.
Yes, right.
That's what I noticed today, is this noisier.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, plus Baton Rouge is a much bigger town than Simsbury. I mean, how many million people live there? We have like 25,000.
Right.
This is not exactly a comparison.
That's true. So how will this change things for you personally to have things opening back up?
Well, it already has. We have a gorgeous weather day going on today. So I got my walk in, and on the walk, I could see it instantly. People who had been pleasant enough, they were trying to keep their spirits up, were grinning and waving hello and so forth. All the spirit was coming up. All of the excitement. People were finally, it was like they were emerging from their winter cocoons or something.
Well, that's what I've been saying the whole time, is I'm just looking at this as a time where we're all in a cocoon.
Yeah.
And what happens in a cocoon, right? Like transformation is what happens. Yeah. So we talk about all the time, people use the word evolve, like that we're evolving, but evolution is slow and transformation can happen in a much shorter period of time. So I've been looking at it that way and seeing, what I was asking my group today, how their habits have changed, any kind of habits,
right? Shopping
habits, dress code, drinking, diet, exercise. And it was really interesting to hear what everybody was saying, because, there were a lot of big changes in people's lives that really all seemed positive. Of course, it's a group of people that are pretty positive. So, but it was nice to see that and to hear about it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I agree with you. This is a transformative experience, and not just in one or two ways. I think we have yet to even see all the ways that it's going to be transformative, but we're starting to see them, and it's fun. It feels good. I mean, you can just I've long described this as like a blanket of fear that descended on the community. The blanket of fear is lifting. I mean, you can feel it come off. You walk into the store today. Yeah, people are still distancing and masking, but the vibe is different. I mean, you could almost see people smiling through their eyes. You couldn't see their mouths, but you could see the eyes, like, little crinkles,
Right.
It's a different feel than what it was a month ago by a large amount.
Yeah. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds, and how, so one of the things that I had asked people was how the other day yesterday I asked a question about your favorite creative outlet. And it was really funny because a person that I'm friends with that's very creative and works in lots of different mediums, from painting to, artisanal baking to just all kinds of things, said, favorite? Like, I have to pick one. And I said, I guess that wasn't a very fair question. And even to myself, after she asked it, I thought, well, that's a hard question for me, because I work in all kinds of different creative mediums, right?
Sure.
But she started talking about that we've never had a time in history where artists were well paid for their work, in the sense that, all artists or most artists don't have to have some other kind of source of income, but they can
Right.
just freely focus on their work. And I said, well, that's been a lifelong hope of mine. And I'm hoping that that's something that comes out of this situation, right? That
I think it's a very good chance of that, actually. I mean, I don't really want to go too far that way because that could easily get into politics. But there are reasons that I have for believing this is not just the shift and we're done. This is like part of an
oh, no,
ongoing
no. It's not a shift and we're done.
No.
It's closer to evolution than transformation. But
Well, it's transformative evolution because it has the evolutionary aspect, but it's happening fairly quickly.
Yeah.
You know?
We'll see it. We'll see it, but I don't believe it's going to happen, next month. I
Probably
think
not that soon, although I wouldn't rule it
slowly
out.
unfold. Slowly unfold.
I mean, the stuff that's happened during the last couple months that 3 months ago I would have said wouldn't have happened that quickly or at all.
Right.
I was like, oh, well, maybe not.
Right? Did you, I know we joked probably last week or the week before, we were joking about my husband saying, because we had all of these days that were really cool weather-wise to what we're used to. And he was joking saying, did we actually thwart climate change just by shutting everything down for 8 weeks? But there's been a 17% reduction in like carbon emissions in the last month.
That's a very positive thing. Not so much, I mean, people who are big advocates of, we got to stop climate change are going to get excited about that. But to me, the excitement is in the fact that I think most people aren't really jazzed by it like the advocates are. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people would like to have cleaner air and so forth. And that's really the way they see it. Well, they saw it. They saw it during this time period. They saw it. I mean, it was pretty dramatic. And that's something I can see people, kind of signing. Yeah, okay, I want more of that clean air. I like that.
And how
I don't really care so much about the other, but I like the clean air part.
How fast it was.
Very fast.
I remember the advice columnists back in the day, Dear Abby and Ann Landers.
Yes.
Okay, so one of them, they were sisters. One of them, I think it was Ann Landers, had this very famous article in the paper that I don't know if she wrote or a doctor wrote in or whatever, but it had to do with what happens in your body when you quit smoking.
Okay.
And I don't remember all the points, but it went like day 1 and it said something that happened day 2. And by day 6, like all these, and it's just a miracle of how our body will heal itself when we give it what it needs or we take away what's hindering it. Right. And it was really encouraging for anybody that was like wanting to quit smoking because it's like, oh my gosh, look how fast my body is going to start recovering and healing itself. Yeah. Well, that was, to me, that's what I always took away from that little article was the quickness of it, like how fast our bodies will start healing, right? And we know this we go outside, we get a scratch or a cut, and in a day or two, it's already, healing itself, right?
Right.
But to see the effect on the environment so fast, like I was like, it's only been a couple of months. So I don't know. I was excited about it. I thought it was amazing to see.
It's funny. Because when Louise and I went down to Florida to visit my brother Mark and sister-in-law Ioana, of course, helps to do the Monday show with me, my brother and I got talking about Tesla cars. Tesla, of course, makes an electric car. There are a number of electric car manufacturers, but we were interested in Tesla because we were also talking about Elon Musk and his SpaceX thing, and that became like a whole thing because we're right next to Cape Canaveral, so of course you talk about stuff like that.
Right.
And it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was the first time in a long time I'd even thought about electric cars. As we're getting ready to leave, we're driving to the airport. My brother's taking us to the airport. We stopped off at a Tesla dealership just to take a look at a Tesla because it was fun, and we didn't have time to test drive it or anything. Just, okay, let's check it out. Oh, there's the screen. Look at all the stuff that's on here. Really cool. Spent maybe 10 minutes. That was about it. And then along comes this pandemic and you've got all this clearing of the atmosphere. And all it did was remind me of that positive experience that I had, that good feeling, really good feeling experience that I really liked. Of sitting in that Tesla. It just brought it back. I said, whoa, I want to have a Tesla even more now. Just because the air cleared. It felt so much greater. Like, oh God, I can't wait to have a Tesla. This is fabulous.
Yeah, it's kind of a chain reaction, if you would.
That's exactly what it is. Well, it's law of attraction, right? You focus on it, you get more of the same kind of thing coming along.
Right.
Which is cool stuff.
Exactly.
There was a post that I saw, and I wanted to make this kind of the topic today. A post that I saw on one of the Facebook groups. I think it's the one called the Abraham Hicks Vortex group. And the post was about another post that had gotten deleted. It made me think about a conversation you and I had. We've had a number of times about the nature of the words positive and negative. And I think we both come to the conclusion that we try to avoid those words because they're really not as helpful as they sound.
Right.
They can get you in trouble pretty quick.
Yeah.
And indeed, that's what happened in this case, because long story short, there was a post about vaccines, and the admin was fearful that it was going to turn into some sort of negative rant or something like that. And so he deleted it, saying, well, it violates our terms of service, or it violates our rules, because we only want to focus on positivity. And a whole bunch of people took umbrage, saying, well, we like that topic. We want that. That's a good feeling topic to us. So there was this big thing going on. And the thing that was the determinant where the admin was concerned was, we have, from 2012, when we first formed this group, we have always gone with the rule that everything has to be based on positivity here. So that made me think, look what happened. He had this rule. I'm not sure I could call it a rule. Personally, I think I'd call it a whim, because it was based on his preference rather than anything that's more objective. I mean, you ask 5 people, is vaccine a positive topic or a negative topic? You get 5 different answers. So it's not like there's an objective standard there, And look what came out of that, because he insisted on thinking about it as positivity. It came out with this whole thing that kind of exploded. So I figured, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've always loved what you taught me. When you taught me, it's about preference. It's about what you like and dislike, not about positive and negative. God, that resonated with me. And that's what I was thinking about when I saw that post.
Well, interesting. This past month, I got an email from a young lady that was in high school and was doing a project on law of attraction.
Okay.
And so she wanted to talk to some law of attraction experts. And so she had an interview with me and with another coach, a couple other coaches. And I said to her, she talked to me on the phone for 20 minutes, asked me some questions. And she said, I said, look, I didn't really know what the project was. It was an essay. I wasn't, sure at the time, but I said, whenever you finish your project, if you send me a link, I'd love to see it.
Sure.
So yesterday, it wasn't a link. It was a document. She sent me her essay. It was 11 pages long.
Oh my goodness.
And it was really written from her point of view, and about her own experiences. And it was so sweet. She talked about when she was younger, that she wanted a part in a play, and that everyone wanted the same part in the school play. And that, she went through all of the experience that she had with feeling like worried that she wouldn't get the part, and like thinking that she'd try out and that they would laugh at her, and that she would feel humiliation as she took the walk of shame back to her seat, and all these things. And I mean, she was really young, and really even younger at the time of the experience, right? And she said, and it happened just like I thought it was going to happen. So she's talking about how law of attraction kind of proved itself out. And then she talked about her mother or a teacher or someone saying to her, well, that's the way life is. You don't always get what you want. And so this was the introduction to her essay, because she said, can you always get what you want, right? Or are you always creating? Well, what I thought was interesting is anytime, you do an interview with someone, of course, whatever you said that affected them personally is usually the thing that's going to show up in the essay.
Right.
And she made a point that the thing that affected her that was different, that I talked about than the other coaches that she interviewed, was the idea that it's okay to feel things that don't feel good. And that you shouldn't feel shame if you feel one of those feelings, right? And I thought, oh wow, because that was the thing that really, because she said that was the thing she was struggling with, is that she was trying to pretend all the time that everything was good all the time, even if it didn't feel good. Right. And so I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I'm so glad that she was, impressed by that one fact, because you can move into a better feeling place much easier when you're willing to admit that you're not in a good feeling.
No doubt. I mean, that was actually one of the points I made in this particular controversy. I said, Abraham, step one is, what is it that you desire? And very often that starts with, here's what I don't desire. What do I desire instead? You kind of have to have the one in order to understand the other.
Yeah. No, I have to, I didn't read the situation like you did, so
Right.
I'm hearing it from you.
Sure.
And I have to also get on the other side of the fence and like recognize that when you're running a group, that sometimes you do see the potential drama or chaos unfolding before other people might notice it because you've been there before. And I can understand the desire to kind of want to like, oh, okay, we don't want to go down this road today. But yeah, it is interesting that everything's always a mirror for us, right? So we're like, okay, here I was worried that this was going to blow up. So I got rid of it and it blew up anyway.
Oops.
Yeah, definitely.
It
So
was funny too.
maybe it's just, like you said at the beginning of our show today, you said, well, I don't want to go too far down this road because I don't want to get into politics.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe that's the way the moderator viewed this is political, because unfortunately, practically everything has become political right now.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like a minefield to try to have a conversation.
It's a challenge. I mean, you have to really be on your game as a conscious creator to have a conversation in a topic like that without turning it into a fight.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because there's a tremendous incentive in political discussions to fight. At some point, people feel like they're kind of out of, they feel like their legs have been cut out from underneath them for whatever reason. And so they just know that deep down inside what they believe is really what they believe. So it must be true. And so they'll just kind of lash out. Even if they have nothing available to go with, they'll just lash out anyway. And as soon as they lash out, then the other side says, oh, wait a minute, this person's lashing out at me. I'm going to lash out at them. And then lash.
It's true. And unfortunately, right now, it seems like every single topic that you could ever speak about has somehow become politicized. And so, like I've been a little bit, I always was pretty quiet about anything political in my social media presence, but in my private group, I never spoke about politics because I felt like it just wasn't necessary. Well, lately, I've not been speaking about politics so much as I've been asking questions that could definitely turn political.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just asking them anyway. Right?
It's I like that. I really do. I'm actually doing very much the same thing, although my motivation might be a little bit different from yours because I think my own history, I had a lot of political.
Yeah, right.
And I've been trying to let go of all of those. So I'm using that technique you just described of asking carefully phrased questions as a way of kind of checking myself. Have I let go of this thing enough? If I haven't, then I know pretty quickly because all of a sudden my emotions are up and I'm ready to go, head to head and start swinging and so forth. Oh, okay. I guess I didn't root that one out enough.
Well, even if you're not talking about politics, like in my coaching practice, of course, I don't think I've ever coached anybody around politics, right?
Yeah.
But I coach
pretty
around,
unusual, I would think.
Right. I mean, I'm not a political consultant and I'm not, I'm not coaching someone around speaking in a political sense.
Right.
But one of the things I recognize is that because we have this idea, we say, just let it go, right? Let it go. And it's like the Frozen song from the movie, right? It's like, I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to let this bother me. I just got to let this go.
Right.
And the way if you've actually let it go is that there's no emotional charge for you.
That's right.
So when someone says to me, well, I had this really awful experience with an ex and, I let go of it. I mean, I'm over it now. So it's not a big deal, but every time, and I can hear in their voice, they start telling the story and they're getting riled up, right? And I'm like, it doesn't sound like you've let go of it.
Yeah,
That's how you tell there's still an emotional charge.
That's right.
And when we have really let go, then we can talk about it. And there's not an emotional charge. And as far right now as politics are concerned, there's so much polarity that everyone's got some kind of charge about something, right? So it's like, you and I have talked about this a lot. It's like, did you watch the news today? Yeah, for about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It's a good strategy.
Right.
and literally what you're talking about is exactly why I said what I said earlier. I don't want to go down the politics hole. Why? Because of me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Because of me. I know that if I go too far down there, I could turn this into something. I really don't want to do that because this is our daily dose of happy. And I want to make sure it stays there.
No, it's true. My husband was reading me something yesterday. Oh no, he's been taking a lot of continuing legal education because he's here at home. Right. It's like the time to do it. And so he said, he said to me, hey, it's a life coach. And she's talking about stress. He had the earbuds in, right? He's watching this CLE video. And so he's, as she's talking, teaching the group, he's like saying the things to me, right? What they are. And she said not to read the news first thing in the morning. I'm so guilty of. I'm really guilty of this. And it's just not a good strategy. I'm not suggesting anyone else does it. I'm trying to be better about it.
But I think everybody does. Not everybody. A large segment of the population does check the news in the morning. I think that's just part of what people do. Now, I think of my friend Joel Elston made it a deliberate thing, and I think he stuck to it. Starting about 3 years ago, he stopped.
Just about 3 years ago.
Yeah, how about that? 3 years ago, or I think it was 3 years ago, he stopped watching the news and instead was watching YouTube videos that were on, self-help type topics.
Okay.
Law of attraction.
Like all together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know how on YouTube you can start a thing and it'll just feed the next one and the next one. So he just set it up to run and just listen to it in the background while.
But I mean, he stopped watching the news altogether, just altogether at all.
Yeah. Now I know that he is often aware of the biggest news stuff going on. I mean, he certainly knew about coronavirus because you can't really avoid it. You don't have to watch news to know that it's there. Right.
I used to not watch the news at all before 15 years ago. And I think I told you this before when I was applying to be accepted at the coaching school that I got my certification from.
Right.
It was a very, very long application.
Yeah.
And one of the questions on the application said, do you watch the news? And it had yes, no.
Everybody wants to know.
But then it had a follow-up question, and it was like, how has this affected your life? So whether you said yes or no, they were asking, how has this affected your life? And I said, I've never missed a hurricane. Right? Because
I love it.
Well, because at the time in my life, that would be one of the things that you needed to know about, like we need to know about coronavirus. Like you need to know if a hurricane is coming. And somehow, even though I didn't watch the news, never missed a hurricane. So I had that philosophy at that time, right? That, you know what, if I need to know it, I'm going to find out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to know it. And I think now the reason why so many people are looking at the news first thing is because everything in the world seems first of all, we have a big global thing going on that's important and scary. And then because everything in the news cycle moves so fast, there was a time when if you didn't look at the news for a couple of weeks, really nothing had changed. And now
That's right. That's true.
Now everything changes so much you can not look for a couple of weeks and it probably still won't matter because, so many things have happened. It's like, whatever, I can't keep up with it anyway. So.
Well, that's where I value something like a Google News or any of the news aggregating services because you can get it all in a glance and you're done. I mean, you really don't have to go any deeper than that. If you do need to have some idea of what the latest thing that happened was today, you can scan it in about 20 seconds and you're done. You don't have to do anything more. Now, do I stop at 20 seconds? Not necessarily.
Well, this is a good topic, though. You started talking about how what we're focusing on, like the outcome we're focusing on, if we keep focusing there, it's probably going to happen regardless of our actions.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Which is what happened in this thing. It's like,
right.
And so I see that same topic applying to things like this. Like, how are we dealing with the news? Mm-hmm. How are we dealing with current events? How are we dealing with whatever's going on in the world that we want to know about? And how can we do that as conscious creators who want to create our own experience every day? Mm-hmm. Like, we're doing this day by day. It's not off in the future. It's right now.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. One of my favorite, and I'm not a huge Abraham Hicks person.
No, you're not.
I'm not.
And it's not so many different sources. It'd be hard to pin you down on what your source is, actually.
Well, and it's not that I disagree with Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
But I also think there's more information that is valuable.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love in Abraham Hicks's repertoire of like methods is something I think that they call it segment intending.
Yes. Right. Yes.
Right. And I think that it's really valuable because generally speaking, you are staying in the present moment with it.
That's right.
So it might be a valuable method to employ for looking at news, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to look at the news or whatever, but I'm going to intend this next segment, this 5 minutes, 1 minute, 20 minutes, whatever it is, to be a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
what do you think? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's, we get to be conscious about our response.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always have to be a reaction.
True.
But if we're not being conscious about it, it's probably going to be a reaction. We're going to react. You always here's this term, knee-jerk reaction. It's like we look at it and we're triggered. It's another word, or it has an emotional charge for us. And I mean, look, I'm dealing with this. I deal with this every day. I look at a headline and I'm like, ah! So
an emotional response, I think we can all relate to that.
I'm kind of brainstorming with myself right now about what would be a way where, because it feels important to me, and I'm curious about current events. I want to know. I have a civic responsibility, or I have a personal sense of civic responsibility, and I want to know. So what's the best strategy to keep in the know without it becoming something that creates more charge, more drama, more chaos, more upset, more whatever?
Well, you mentioned it in the segment intending. That's one strategy that you can follow.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing for me where segment intending is concerned, the first time that I heard about it, I didn't actually understand what they meant. I had to do a number of podcast episodes with people like you in order to really get what they were trying to get. Once I finally got it, then it seemed like a chore. It seemed like a lot of work to have to do it. But I tried doing it anyway, and I stuck it out, and I got some good results out of it too. Right. But it was still a chore. And I said to myself, why is this a chore? I mean, it's me who's making it a chore. It's not like it's all that difficult to do. Why is this a chore? And then I finally realized what the answer was. I like it better when I simply ask myself, how am I feeling and what feels better?
Okay. Yeah.
And when I realized that was the same thing as segment intending, it's like, oh, well, I can do that.
Well, I like the idea of making an intention for a feeling or an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So a sensation or an emotional experience, making an intention for that at the beginning of whatever it is. So in other words, some things that we don't like to do, like if you have to make a phone call that you think is going to be stressful, oh, I have to call customer service about this issue, and I have to do it, and I'm not looking forward to it. Instead, to just make the intention that it's going to go beautifully. Because we've all had both kinds of those phone calls, right? The one where the person's not understanding us and we're on hold forever and they're arguing with us, or the one where, oh my gosh, this person was so helpful. They knew exactly what I needed and they helped me and it was done. And that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. That's the kind of result that we want. So if we go into everything like that, but where it's just for the next thing, okay, what am I going to do now? Okay, now I have the podcast. And I'm going to intend that we're going to have a lively discussion that's really great, that's valuable to all the hearers, and that leaves everybody feeling good. Okay, that's the intention.
It's a good one.
I think if we form a habit about segment intending, about creating an intention, not for actually what happens, but for how our emotional experience about it is in the outcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
That makes it so much easier. I mean, it's kind of like trying to monitor those 65,000 thoughts we have every day. It's so much easier to monitor how you feel about the whole thing. I mean, there's like, a handful of those.
Exactly. Because even though with our thoughts are hard enough to control or keep track of, but when we are going into a situation where there's another person involved or a group of people involved or some other variable, we don't really know what's going to happen, but we can make an intention in advance about how we are going to conduct ourselves and how we're going to feel about it. And I think it's possible to do
Jeffrey
it with the news.
I
will report back.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Jeffrey was raising a question in the live stream. He says, this means that our vibe is different. So can we describe how we are feeling, and can we talk about our social and relationship ideals? I think he was referring to what happens in a Facebook group about Abraham Hicks, but this also applies in general.
Well, I think I think that if we keep the focus on ourselves,
Exactly.
if I keep the focus on me and not taking things personally, right? Because that happens too. People start to argue in some of these discussions where we're talking
Right.
about threads on social media. And, I want to say that I hope in a good vibe group where everybody's there to feel better, that there are no trolls, but I know that's not true because I know that trolls are trolls and that their intention is to create chaos and suffering, and so if we don't take that personally and we just focus on ourselves, number one, speaking what we believe to be true for us, and not, and also the values that we hold. Like I don't get a thrill out of insulting people. So I'm not going to show up in a thread and just be an
Right.
insulting presence there, right? Hopefully not. Hopefully people won't be insulted by what I say. But you know what? Some people might be because they don't agree with what I say and they take
Sure.
everything personally. So how can I deal with that? Well, I just have to deal with it by not taking things personally.
Yeah.
And recognizing they get to believe what they want to believe. We
Which,
all
by
get
the
to
way,
have our, yeah.
that's one of the advantages of the whole thing about not using positive and negative and using I prefer and I don't prefer.
Yeah.
Because when you express things in terms of I prefer this or I don't prefer that, it's kind of hard to argue with that. You could say, well, I prefer something different, but where's the disagreement? Okay, you like this, I like that. It's just that simple.
It's always a judgment call.
Yeah.
As soon as we say this isn't positive,
well, now we got a different thing.
Well, there's a hermetic principle of polarity, right? That everything contains its equal. And so it's all on a scale. And so what seems, like look at when a doctor asks a patient is trying to assess the level of pain, they have what they call a subjective unit of discomfort, an SUD, right? And so you see the signs in the ER or wherever to say 1 through 10, right? The picture with the 1 has a little smiling face, and the picture with the 10 has a frowny, screaming face. It's really bad, right? It's just a judgment call because whatever feels like a 3 to me might feel like a 6 to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like that with everything in the universe. Everything is on some kind of scale of polarity. So the way we deal with it, Jeffrey, is just by being true to ourselves and realizing that other people's stuff is about them. It's not about you, right?
That's huge. Recognizing whose energy it is, whose thing it is, because it's so easy to just kind of snap into somebody else's energy because it's similar to some sore point you got on your side.
Well, I told you the story about us taking the walk and the people that were so upset and were screaming in our face.
Right,
they were walking, we were in the car.
Right.
And I really had to, the more I thought about it, I was like, this is just somebody in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I didn't cause their pain. Their pain was already there. One of my earliest mentors taught me that. He said, a man spills a cup of hot coffee and he gets angry. And he says, the coffee didn't make the man angry. The man made the coffee angry.
I love it.
Right? In other words, the man had anger in him already and just attracted some kind of circumstance where he could express it.
Right.
So this person that was like screaming at us, that was in them already.
Right.
And it just was an opportunity they took to express it. And that's what I always bring myself back to that. Of course, I'm careful that I'm like, oh no, did I say something to offend this person? Right. But beyond that, beyond you being careful with your words and speaking the truth and keeping your word, everything else is on someone else. Everybody's responsible for their own, the word responsibility.
Yeah.
We are responsible.
It's one of the most misunderstood words, actually, right. Responsibility. It really is. We think we understand it. Even when I get into conscious creator circles, I thought I understood it. And now I found, well, actually, I have to understand it a little bit more than I did before. It's a tough word. It's a tough concept. It has a lot going on there. And the thing that I keep thinking about here is how when we are in these situations where we're faced with this stuff, it's hard to remember to say, whose energy is this? But that's a great skill to have.
Yeah.
It's a
and
great
also,
skill to have.
If this is something that I think is so important, and that is to me, step one of being successful at being a conscious creator is what I call radical responsibility. It means I take responsibility for every experience that I have. It doesn't mean that I'm to blame for something.
Right.
It just means I'm willing to take the responsibility. So, right? So things will happen that are out of my control that I don't prefer. Because welcome to Earth.
That's right.
But when they do, I get to say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for how I deal with this, for how I feel about it, for the story I tell about it, for what my experience is. So what action can I take to create a better experience for myself? I mean, that's all part of taking radical responsibility, because if we're in that other space that doesn't take that and that blames everything, so somebody said something in a thread today that really was insulting to me and I'm feeling so bad about it and I'm really angry because this person had the nerve to talk to me that way. Mm-hmm. Well, suddenly I'm blaming someone else for my experience.
Yeah.
And the energy of blame doesn't create anything except for more of that.
That's right. Very, very low vibration stuff. Actually, it reminds me of something that's happened that I hadn't really thought about it in an LOA perspective until we had this conversation just now. But as I'm thinking like, oh, yeah, I guess I really did attract that. Because speaking of Facebook groups, there's a local group that I created just for the area that I live in here. It's called the Farmington Valley. It has like 5,000 members in it. And most of the time, it's very non-controversial. There have been a couple of times, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, I accidentally created controversy. But most of the time, it's pretty good. The only thing that has kind of annoyed me about it is there have been times where these hacker types, these robot types will try to get into your group so they can spread their messages and so forth. And Facebook has given us a way to combat that. They have this thing where you can put a question up or you can put a series of questions up.
Right.
Kind of gauge, is this a human being? Is this somebody who really wants to be involved? They really actually understand what the topic is, all that kind of thing.
Right.
So I do that too. And what I found is very often, not all the time, but very often, the ones who are using these bots have them set up to automatically answer the question, yes, no matter what the question is. Well, my question specifically says in it, yes is not an acceptable answer. And so I know if they put yes in there, it's a bot, right?
Yeah.
So I've been getting a lot of bots. And so
wow.
I was getting kind of frustrated about it. And so I said, I'm going to let Facebook know. So I've been reporting each one that came through. And it was getting more and more of them coming through to the point where like every day there were like a whole bunch of bots coming through.
Oh, no.
I'm saying, Facebook, I'm getting all these bots. And then I'm sitting here saying, wait a minute, I attracted that. I kept focusing on all the bots and I kept getting bots. But I didn't know it. I wasn't aware of it while I was in the middle of it.
I think we talked about this last week and probably every week, but the idea that, it's so much easier to see when it's not you.
Right.
Right. And when it's me, when it's you, it's like, oh my goodness, how did I not see that? But that's the thing, it's the focus and the energy focused on that thing happening. And as soon as you can let it go, or what I like to do is ask myself, why, okay, so I just take responsibility for creating it like you did. You said, oh my gosh, I attracted this, why did I attract this? What part of this am I really digging? Do I like the kind of righteous indignation that I'm feeling? Does that feel good in my body to be like, oh, see, these hacker types are doing this to me,
It's a great point, because I talked about how I've been kind of unlearning my old political self. And right. That's a big piece of it, because I can't say I like that feeling, but I had a kind of, and to a certain degree still have a bit of an addiction to that feeling. Like it is so familiar that it's like, yes, I know it's not really good for me, but I like that feeling in the sense that I'm used to it. It feels very familiar. I can count on that one.
If you've ever been in an elevator where a problem happened and the elevator just started free falling, you can imagine it if you haven't, but I can guarantee you nobody likes that feeling.
Right. Sure.
Right? Nobody likes that feeling.
Yeah.
It's the same exact feeling
maybe
you
someone
have.
Who's suicidal, but that's about it.
Right, well, it's the same feeling that you have on the downslope of a roller coaster.
True. Well, I don't like those either, but still.
But people willingly do that all the time, pay money to do it, right? And love it. Mm-hmm. And so it's that kind of thing where we've talked about perception before. It's like I get to choose whether I perceive this as uncomfortable or pleasurable, or, what part of the spectrum it's on. And you hit the nail on the head with the word addiction, because we get addicted to certain feelings. We get addicted to drama. I always joke that my life's been drama free for like the longest time, and it's wonderful. But I know other people that have a lot of drama.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all know somebody that their drama meter would be sort of at the end of the spectrum, and people even talk about it and say, oh my gosh, it's just one thing after another with this person, like, or feel bad for them, right? Say, oh my gosh, they can't catch a break. It's just like always some big, huge, dramatic thing going on. Well, sometimes there's an addiction to the big, huge drama. Drama in our life creates a brain chemical, right? And
it does.
We get addicted to those brain chemicals that we make. And so I think that happens. I think it happens I think this was a great example of it, right? It's like feeling so righteous and so like my view is correct. And, look at all these idiots that don't understand the truth, right? It's like, I mean, people get in that state of mind, and it might not be something they consciously think feels good, but they are going after it a little bit. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the hardest part of doing what I was doing, which was letting go of all the political stuff. The hardest part is admitting to myself that I was deliberately choosing, I didn't like this part, deliberately choosing stuff that I didn't like the feeling of. That was hard to come to grips with. Why on earth would I pick feeling stuff that I don't like, and yet I was doing it?
You know what that reminds me of? We might have talked about this, but the tapping, the EFT, emotional freedom technique. I taught that to my kids. I learned it when I managed a medical office. The doctors taught that to me, 20 years ago.
Right.
It wasn't a big deal at that time. No one knew about it, but I actually have my first book where I learned about it. And I taught it to my kids, and my kids always used it with great success. And I had taught it to a group of friends of mine one time who happened to be at my house. There's a thing where you can tap not just for yourself, but you can tap surrogately. You can tap for someone else. So my son was a pro bicyclist at the time. And when he was in a race, he and his brother have a very close connection. They were best friends. But when he was in a race, when he would come around a lap, if he was like having a cramp in his leg or, some kind of problem, he would take his finger and tap his temple or his forehead and look at his brother. And he was saying, start tapping for me because I'm having trouble. I'm dehydrated or whatever. Right. So his brother would start tapping, and he'd come around the lap and give him the thumbs up. Be like, it worked. It's better, right? So we tapped all the time. And one time I had these friends over that I had been teaching how to do tapping. And my son called. He was riding his bike about 45 minutes from here where we actually have some little foothills. He was trying to get some terrain relief and climb up hills. And a bunch of yellow jackets got inside his jersey and his cycling helmet.
Jeez. Ouch.
And so he called and told us what was happening. He said, please tap for me. Like, I can't get rid of these things and it's painful and I got to get my bike down the hill. And we all started tapping for him. And the bees had left and his swelling went down and he finished his ride. And it was just sort of amazing. Well, I know I sound like I'm going on this long circuit.
It's an interesting story, though. I'm curious to see where you're going.
I'm coming around to here. I know this stuff is effective. I know it works. And then I will have some kind of an issue and the thought will come to me, oh, I could tap for this, right? And I won't do it.
Yes,
and I'll start talking myself out of it. Well, I'm going to go get a cup of tea first.
Yeah.
I think the dryer just buzzed and I should go get the laundry. Like all of these reasons will start coming up. And I'm saying to myself, why are you not tapping? Why? Why are you resisting this so hard? When, this headache you have or whatever little thing you were going to tap about, this melancholy, whatever it is, because you can tap for emotions, but physical things or whatever. Why am I not tapping? Why? I get so frustrated with myself, like you're saying. It's like, why? I know if I go over here and get in this discussion, it's not going to feel good. Why am I drawn to do it anyway?
And I realize also part of this is that journey that we talk about.
Yes.
That this is a journey. And when we start out as conscious creators, when we first learn about law of attraction, about the role that our mental faculties play in the whole thing, the role that emotions play, the kinds of things we're talking about here. We, on some level, those of us who stick with it, some of us give up. Some people just quit, say, well, this is a bunch of nonsense. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to go away. But some of us stick with it. And as we stick with it, we try a few things and then we complain that it doesn't work. And then maybe somebody talks us into trying, an affirmation or a vision board or something. So we try that and we kind of stumble our way along. And then somewhere along the way, something really kind of works. And so we feel a little bit better about that. But there's all these other times where it doesn't really work. And then there's other times, and then we're constantly slowly moving off that end of the range that says nothing works, nothing works, nothing works. Some things sometimes work, something a little more works, some more works. Halfway through, a lot is working, and then we reach the tipping point, and then all of a sudden it starts to get easier. We're on that thing. So I think whenever we are being drawn to the question, why is it that I keep going to this other thing? It's because there's that negative side we're still feeling. It's still there.
And there's more than one facet to this, because we've talked about this too. You said it's a journey. Yeah. Part of our journey here is that we want to feel everything.
Yeah.
We want to feel everything. Now, our ego does not agree with that. The ego says, no, that's not true. I just want to have lots of money and a really hot husband that loves me like crazy and all the things I want, and be vibrantly healthy and have good things all the time and all the good foods and all the good things and all the happy friends. And I don't want that crap. Don't say that to me. Mm-hmm. That's the ego. The ego only wants the things that are shiny, bright, look good, fall into that good category. Yeah. But there's another part of us as well that actually isn't just willing, but wants to feel all the things. And when we resist feeling all the things, it just drags it out longer. Mm-hmm. Because that part of us, that subconscious part of us, is a powerful, powerful creator. Some people call this the shadow part of us. Carl Jung called it the shadow and said, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life, and we will call it fate. So think about that part. It will rule our life. What will rule our life? The part that's creating all this crap that we think we don't want. This is the exact reason why people say this stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, sure.
I've been trying and trying and trying, and all my life keeps creating is terrible things or things I don't want. And it's like, well, if we can get to the point where we let ourselves have those things a little bit, we let ourselves feel the sadness, feel the grief, feel the loss, feel the anger, just recognize it's a human feeling and it's okay, it dissolves.
And part of the crushing part of coming to the realization you just described, I'm going to come at it kind of in a different way, is recognizing that not only is there subconscious programming going on that is affecting me in the way you described, but in many cases, I either accepted that programming or created that programming and forgot about it.
Yeah.
This was actually part of my conscious process some point in the past. I focused on it, I built it up, and then I let it go, and it just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, but it was going in the background where I wasn't noticing it. So it became subconscious.
Yeah, and then we label it bad and try to get rid of it.
Right. And I sit here and I think to myself, oh, God, I did it to myself again.
We're complex beings, we are.
We truly are.
But we're very powerful.
And it's a lot of fun. It's a challenge. But it's good. It's good. And it does tie back in a big, big way to what we started the conversation about, this idea that when we try to label things, I've even used it here in the conversation, positive and negative. When we label things positive and negative, we're setting ourselves up without realizing it. It is much better, and we did this a lot in the conversation, where we talk about what we like and what we don't like. Because when we phrase it that way, look how powerful this conversation became. It wasn't because we occasionally used the word positive or negative. It's because we kept focusing on like and don't like, dislike, prefer, don't prefer, want, don't want. That is... Talk about the ability to empower oneself. That is the most self-empowering thing I think we can do.
It really is. And it's such a simple question, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like, well, how does it feel?
Yeah.
How does it feel? And the idea that we can get really curious when we stop labeling, when we stop making everything good, bad, positive, negative, and we just look at it with curiosity, we can begin to even reframe things.
Mm-hmm.
We reframe things all the time, right? We've been doing it with this whole pandemic.
Right.
We've been saying, well, what good things have come out of it and what good things may come out of it in all senses, in my own life, politically, in the world,
exactly.
in science, right? What good things might come out of it. And so that's just a reframe.
Yeah.
We can have two conversations here. We can talk about how terrible it is and how many awful things are coming out of it. And we can do that all day. Or we can say, well, let's reframe this and focus on that maybe something good can come out of it. We can do that with our perceptions of things that are happening to us on a personal level or even on a physical level, like we talked about before. The sense of falling in an elevator or going down the roller coaster slope. It's the same sensation. One of them we welcome and the other one we freak out over.
Yeah, right.
Same sensation, but we've labeled one of them is connected to fear. And the other one is probably fear too, but it's a fear we are welcoming,
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about that yesterday. We had one of our listeners, Josie, came on to read some of her poetry, and that's one of the things that she mentioned. She actually also in the live stream thanked us for having her on. So you're welcome, Josie. We were glad to have you. But she pointed out that it is something that people like. I mean, she's a horror movie fan. Does that mean she likes horrible things? No, just means that she enjoys the thrill of watching a horror movie.
Yeah. And we do, I mean, look at some of the programs that are the highest rated shows out there. Mm-hmm. Game of Thrones, full of violence.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And so part of our human nature takes pleasure in things that the ego isn't willing to admit that we take pleasure in it. And it's an interesting idea to think about and to try to reframe everything that way.
I've been thinking a lot about a movie that Benedict Cumberbatch starred in a few years back called The Imitation Game, the story of Alan Turing. Who was the father of the modern computer. He was also the one who helped break the Enigma code during World War II. And in the movie, they have Benedict as Alan saying something that I thought was really profound. He said, "Do you know why people like violence? It's because it feels good." And that's a challenging concept,
right?
But it's true.
Well, one of the ways you can think about that is on an energetic level, right? Like the bottom level of energy is victim energy, which we're feeling victimized, and there can be some pleasure there if we're in that self-righteous or kind of like blame part, because look what's happening to me, and we can take pleasure in that. But the next level up that feels even better is conflict. And, but of course we don't want to stop at level 1 and 2 energy. We want to keep going until we get into the wonderful energy that feels really terrific, that has the power to make miracles and create things, right? It's quite a bit higher than the victim energy or the conflict energy.
And how cool that we can climb there. I mean, we talked about segment intending, and they had I think they had 22 processes. That was the book Asking It Is Given. They had 22 processes in the back. And they also had the 22, I remember this because they're both 22. You have the 22-point emotional guidance scale. And so I'd always be asking myself, okay, so where am I? Which point of the 22 points am I on the emotional guidance scale? And that got exhausting too. And then I read at some point, I think it may have been Abraham, but maybe another teacher, again, what we talked about earlier, well, just what feels better?
It's such a simple question.
So much easier. It's so easy. Yeah. I can do that one, So even if I do find myself getting all upset about bots coming to visit my page, I can get out of it. All I have to do is ask myself what feels better. And, interestingly enough, I did that unwittingly. Because after a whole bunch of days and I was getting dozens of people signing up who were all bots. I mean, it was very clear they were all bots. And I'm going to report this one and report this one. No, I was doing all that. And then there was one day I forgot to do that. And all I got that day were real legitimate people asking to sign up for the group.
Oh,
but I didn't make the connection.
Well, you did eventually.
I did eventually, and that's the point. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Eventually you make the connection. You say, oh, wow, there's another example of how the LOA really gave me exactly what I was focusing on.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny. I remember way back when I first started podcasting with you. So a couple of years ago, we had a week where we just were having all kinds of technical difficulties.
Yes.
The more we talked about it, the worse it got. So we just had to stop. We were trying to apologize to the audience for the technical difficulties, but the more we talk about it, then the worse it got. So
I actually got pissed.
Yeah, at some point we just
Remember
said, we're
that?
not going to talk about this anymore. And eventually, over a day or so,
And that's when it stopped. That's exactly when it stopped. It was crazy. I was so pissed because every single day there was another. It was the same thing as the bots. It was one more technical issue, one more thing going wrong. And as soon as I gave up on it, the whole thing stopped.
It's amazing. As soon as we let go of that resistance. Yeah.
Now, it can be hard to remember how to let go. That's often an issue. I know that's been one for me on numerous occasions, and that's where you kind of have to stop and kind of, reach back to, okay, so what's worked for me in the past? But what's your ideas on that?
What works for me is recognizing that if I'm, resistance is coming one of two ways. It's either a yes or a no. I'm either saying, oh, it has to work this way. Let this work. Why are we having these technical I want it to work. Or no, not more technical difficulties, right? So it's attachment or aversion. It's one of those two things. Mm-hmm. And they're both resistance. So the way I let go is approval and acceptance.
Yeah, that's good.
Is by saying, okay, this is okay. It's okay. I'm going to totally give it my approval. I'm going to give my own reactions approval, and I'm just going to accept it. It is what it is. Good luck, bad luck. Maybe this is happening because something great's going to come out of it. So whatever. I'm not going to be attached to fighting against it or to thinking it has to be a certain way. And that's the easiest way I know to let go.
Those are good. I like those. I would also add in laughter. If
it usually ends in laughter as soon as you say, okay, whatever, let's just think that this is a good thing.
I mean, to me, the laughter, the joke, so to speak. I mean, Abraham made a great point. They said a joke is only a joke because it has a surprise. It's the surprise that makes it funny. And for me, the surprise is recognizing, oh my God, I did this to me again. And so I make a joke out of it. Right. And now all of a sudden it's melting away because I'm not taking it seriously anymore.
Yeah. Or just ask yourself, what part of me is really loving this? Why am I loving this so much? It's like
that's a harder road, but it's a much more effective road. That's the one that I save for like the political stuff when I want to let go of political stuff. Because for me, that was always the really, really hard one.
Part of me likes to fight. Part of me likes the argument. Yeah. Part of me likes to be right. Part of me exactly. And just approve of that part. Mm-hmm. Approval. Not shaming it or judging.
Well, you know what? The other thing I realized that really helps me a lot, I don't like to do it because it's not a whole lot of fun. But when I'm really, really stuck on this thing that has this low energy thing that I'm really addicted to, I'm really determined, I'm used to it, I want it, I keep going for this thing that I don't like, I say to myself, okay, what does that feel like right now? That thing you really, 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 really don't like. How does that feel? And so I allow myself to really feel it, and it feels horrible. It just feels awful. And talk about aversion therapy, that's often enough to snap me out of it. Just right there. I really don't like that. I just realized I had been spending all this time keeping it away because I don't like this thing. All I had to do is feel it and go away.
The interesting part is that you let yourself feel it. You actually focused on it for a second. You actually said, okay, what am I feeling right now? And most people don't do that. And that's the powerful thing. Yeah, no, I love it. It's great. Yeah.
It's not easy to do. Not easy to do. But boy, the payoff is great.
Yeah.
I've been able to let go of some really big deals for myself. Stuff that, for somebody else would have been nothing. But for me, it was a really, really big deal. And I like the progress I've made because of it. So, yeah. But I don't use that in most cases. I use it only in the really tough cases.
Not for everything.
There's a technique for almost anything that we need to do, and that's really cool. So
it's true.
Good stuff. This has been good. A really good conversation.
Yeah, it has been.
I want to take a moment also to remind people who are loving this and perhaps had not yet decided to become a subscriber to subscribe. If you don't know how to do it, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net. And at the top of the page, you'll see instructions on how to do it. Check us out on YouTube as well, because we live stream to YouTube. That's where the live streamers come in and share their comments. Jeffrey has been sharing a bunch of stuff. He said after the segment ending, wouldn't it be great when? And then he had ... It's like you can just.
Oh, I love that one too. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice, right?
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? That's also a good technique. Really good. So you can join the live streamers and follow us there as well. But whatever you do, make sure you subscribe and get that daily dose 5 days a week, because it pays. It pays off. And it helps you find little techniques like, feeling the feeling, like we were talking about today.
Exactly.
So thank you, Cindy, so much. Thank you for sharing your stuff. as usual, it's wonderful.
Thank you for having me. Love being here as usual.
Thank you, live streamers. Thank you especially to podcast listeners. Without you, we wouldn't have a podcast. I mean, we would, but it's so much more fun to have somebody.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the people who are now signing up as subscribers for the first time. We love you too. So,
yes, we do.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.
Bye.